So the question is this: how can God be good and perfect and all powerful? How can God be good and there be evil in this world?
Do you have any doubt?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so you have at least even 1% doubt.
Oh, definitely. And I think especially when there are times of things that are far more existential than historical, when times of like struggle and pain and suffering, and I look at the world and I look at how messy it is, children who die young, people who are abused, all of these things. There are moments where I think, how could there be a good God? God is not going to force you into his presence.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to go into heaven. I'm not going to go to heaven then.
No.
I was frustrated at God. There are storms that we make, and then there are storms that we face, meaning
I cry out by day and I hear no answer. And I think what's interesting that I find with the Bible is its transparency in saying we're going to struggle. There's this really great story in the Gospel of John. Well, it's in a couple of the instances of the Gospels where
Close enough, not close enough.
welcome back to the Not Close Enough podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah, and today, I got another episode. It's going to be a good one, and I can't wait. It's actually a question that has been plagued against Christianity and even religion or belief about God since basically the start of everything. I'm going to get into that question in a second, but first, just like I said, welcome to my podcast. I believe that close enough is not close enough. And we can always take another step in our relationship with Jesus. That's what this podcast is all about. We talk about many different things, and I just try to do my best to point it towards how can I and we take another step towards Jesus and our relationship. And this one right here, I've probably talked to so many people about this question right here. And the answer isn't always great. The answer that I give them isn't always a great answer because the question has a lot of emotion behind it. And sometimes when you try to be super logical about a highly emotional question, the people receiving the answer, it just isn't enough. And that may be the case even today. But I'm going to try my best. And I'm also going to react to someone who is way smarter than me, Wes Huff. He has been making his rounds for a couple years now, maybe a year or two. A Christian apologist from Canada. He has defended the Christianity. He is I believe, some type of historian where, not necessarily, where he interprets languages like Hebrew and Aramaic, and he goes through manuscripts and see if they're authentic or not. So look him up. He'll tell you what he does. Okay. But it's important because of his background. He has a lot of knowledge in this. But I bring up this question, and this is the question: how can God be good and there be so much suffering in the world? I've even heard Neil deGrasse, I think that's his name, scientist. He was just like, if God is all good, then he can't be all powerful because bad things happen. And if God is all powerful, then he can't be good because bad things happen. Basically, that's what he's saying. He's saying that God can't be all good and all powerful because of the evil that we see and face in this world. So the question is this: how can God be good and perfect and all powerful? How can God be good? and there'll be evil in this world. So I'm going to break down my thoughts on it, but I'm also going to react to how Wes Huff talks about it, the topic of suffering. And can I tell you, just before I start getting into this reaction, this has been a year of suffering for me. And it's nowhere compared to other people in the world who are actually going through persecution and so much other people that are experiencing suffering on a whole different level. I understand that. And I want to make sure that I'll let you know I'm aware of that. But this is my life and this is my experience. And this is what I'm going through. And you're probably going through your own thing. And this has been a year for me that I have suffered the most. I have lost the most. My heart has been broken, all of those things. This is not a pity party, by the way. Because in my suffering, in my pain, even though when I don't understand it, because of my belief in a good God, Romans 8:28, I know that all things work out for good for those who love God. See, I could have allowed my pain and my suffering and my situation to drive me further from God. But instead, it drew me closer. And it has been a roller coaster of ups and downs, highs and lows, emotional feelings, how should I respond to all of these feelings? And what I try to do, I don't always get this right, but what I try to do is when I'm highly emotional or feeling a lot of feelings, I try to make sure that I bring that to truth and to reality, to God. See, God gave us feelings, and we can't control what we feel. And yes, there are ways that we can control our emotions, but when the emotion appears, a lot of times we can't control that. But we can control how we allow our emotions and our feelings to dictate our direction in our life, to dictate how we move, to dictate our actions, to dictate the way we think and the way we speak. And that is very difficult to do at times. And I could have allowed my pain and my suffering from this year, still in the process of going through a divorce and never thinking this would ever happen to me, and everything that I thought that was secure will be stripped away. And the question that I would ask myself is, Isaiah, how are you going to respond to this? And also, let's be honest, I was frustrated at God. I was like, God, I know I wasn't perfect. I know that. I know I didn't do everything the right way, but I tried. I tried to do it your way. I waited to marriage. I did these things that, the church told me to do. I didn't move in until after we were married. I did all of the things right. Why? And there are things in your life that you can control, and those things are your responsibility. And there have been things that were in my control where I had dropped the ball. Nothing serious or big, but I had dropped the ball. And I have to take accountability for that. There are storms that we make, and then there are storms that we face, meaning that there are storms that we can control or that we do create, and then there are storms that we don't create, and we just got to get through them. And for me, I was frustrated at God for a little bit because I'm like, I was doing things the way I was taught. I was doing things the way, the word has called me to do it. Why are all of these bad things happening to me? Like, God, my worst fears are coming true. How could you allow this to happen to me? How can there be so much evil that I see and that I face? And I think every Christian and everybody has that question of God. I don't understand that if you're such a good God, why is this happening? Why are there children being unalived? Why are there babies born with defects? And why do kids have cancer? And why do people divorce? Why are families broken? Why are there sudden deaths? And I can go on and on. Why are there diseases? Why are there natural disasters? Why does it seem like the people not living for you are getting all the good things, and the people that are living for you are getting all the bad things? Like, God, I don't understand this. Why is there suffering? I went to a Guatemala mission trip a long time ago. We went all the way up in the hills, into the mountains, I should say. And, these people, I saw this 7-year-old girl carry her 3-year-old brother on her back while they were in line to get food. And instead of eating the food like some of the other kids, she brought that food with her brother on her back, walking all the way home, being harassed by stray dogs, bringing this food home so that she can share it with her entire family. And then we go into the homes, and it's a stone home. There's no AC. There's no electrical. There's nothing. And they're sleeping on rocks. And we went there and we built them beds, and 4 kids jump on the bed and they lay down and they wouldn't get up. Because maybe they thought we were going to take it back from them. Why is that happening? And if I was honest with you, like, I can answer part of the question, but the whole question, like the question as a whole, I don't know. That's not a great answer. Now, I do have an answer. I have a process of how I talk about this. But if I was honest with myself, I don't know why these things happen. I don't know why suffering will happen to that family more than the other. I don't know. But this is what I do know. Is that I know that's not how God intended it. You're like, wait a second, doesn't God know everything and all of these things? This is what I mean on that. When God created humans, Adam and Eve, it was perfect. but he didn't create robots. Even the angels. Adam and Eve rebelled against God just like the angels did, just like Lucifer did. Because God knew when he created intelligent beings, angels, humans made in his image, and he wanted a real relationship with us. He didn't want a manufactured relationship with us. He didn't build an AI robot and say, do everything I tell you to do, and we do it because we have no other choice. He gave us a choice. Because real love is a choice that you make every single moment. You might not like your husband or your wife or whatever. Doesn't change the fact that you love them. And I heard this saying before, which is actually pretty cool. I'll get to that later. See, God, when he created us with free will to choose him or not to choose him. And he is good and he is perfect. And we could either choose good or we could choose our own way. And if it's not his way, then it turns into bad and evil. And we chose evil. And when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, it cursed not only humans, it cursed the animals, it cursed the world with sin. And now we live in a broken sin. Even if you're a skeptic and you're like, I don't believe that whole Adam and Eve story or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, then think about this for a second. If I have a 2-year-old, my 2-year-old has already lied to me. My 2-year-old has already tried to manipulate me. My 2-year-old is selfish sometimes. But we didn't teach him to do that. It automatically came out of him. If you have kids, you'll understand this. Why is that? Why is there a phrase called no human is perfect? To be human. That phrase literally means to not be perfect, to be human. I'm only human. Why do we say that? Because we understand that, number one, we're not perfect. But why? Why is that? It's because we live in a sinful world and we are born into it. We are born into sin. Now, some will say, that's just not fair. And you may be right. But we were also born into a world where we could freely choose who and what we love. We could freely choose to love God. Or we could choose to love ourselves in a way that is selfish, that puts us in the center of the universe. We could choose to follow our own desires, and we all know we have sometimes bad fleshly desires to do bad stuff. Someone pulls you over, there's a moment you're like, man, I want to beat that dude up. Or someone says something to you and you're like that flesh and you want to freaking put hands, like we all have that instinct to do bad things. Maybe to do bad things for good reasons. But why? See, there is this thing in us called sin that we're born with. But there also is free will. And the reason why A good God can create and it be good. And then it turns bad and we see evil. It's because God understood that if he were to create, yes, this is what's going to happen, because when I create, or when God creates, especially intelligent beings with free will, they're going to choose evil. Now, you may argue, well, why create us in the first place? That, to be honest, I don't know. I just truly believe God is who he is. God is he's literally called the creator. So I think it's just simply in his nature to create. And so I don't want to get into the mind of God because I can't. I don't know why. And some people say, well, why create if he knows some people are going to go to hell and all of these things, and it doesn't seem fair. And I understand some of those concerns. I'm not blinded by that. I heard someone say, well, this may have been the world, because God is so intelligent, where this would be the less amount of people to turn away from him. Who knows? I don't know. But what I do know is that God is a creator. And he created, and in doing so, when you create intelligent life, created human life, and you wanted a real relationship, you would have to give free will. And with that, you have the option to not love God, to go against God, to go against his ways. And because if God is all good, if we go against him, then guess what we create? We create bad. We create evil. I don't necessarily believe that God created evil. It's almost saying like this, like, in a way, I'm just using this as an example. In a way, like, all right, the person that created the car, but then as someone was driving the car broke down and killed the person, right? But it just happened, right? It wasn't the creator's fault. It just, the car finally broke down. Maybe it exploded, or maybe, I pray this never happens to me or anyone, but like, you have kids. Maybe your kids do something bad. You created them in a way, and they do something bad. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Like, if you're telling them to do bad stuff, that's one thing. But if you train them right and you teach them good, but then, hey, they make their own decisions and they do something wrong, does that make you wrong as well? No. When you create things, it's almost like the whole phrase of like, guns don't kill people, people kill people. They just use guns. And so I don't think that that's actually a fair assessment to put on God. Like, God, why create us if you knew there's going to be... He created us because he could. And he created us to have a relationship with him so that we can have a relationship with God, our creator, to worship him and to love him freely on our own choice. But some choose not to. And when you do that, when you choose not God, sin comes, suffering happens, and now we're in a fallen world. And the best thing about Christianity is there is an antidote one day. that Jesus will come back, and there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and we will be reunited with our Creator, with our Father, and that every tear would be wiped away. All sadness would be gone. There would be no more need for mourning. There would be no more death. Like, that's what we believe will happen one day. And that is a great hope to have. Now, if you don't believe in Christianity, maybe you're atheist, glad you're here watching, but like, what hope do you have? You really think it's just nothing? That's it? You die, nothing happens, that's it? If that's the real harsh truth that you believe in, then nothing in our life truly matters. We're just here, gone, forgotten in a couple generations. You know, you don't have no real meaning, no real purpose. You're just some accident that Stardust created 1 billion freaking years ago or something like that. Right? So that's what you believe in? Okay. I think it takes more faith to be an atheist than it does to be a believer in God. But I'm going to react to Wes Huff. And he answers some questions about suffering and even about hell. So let's go ahead and let's watch this.
Believe something happened.
Yeah, I
that
agree.
they saw something.
Of course.
And so I just think that the explanations of the alternatives of that actually happening are insufficient insofar as how they actually explain the data.
Do you have any doubt?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
have at least even 1% doubt.
Oh, definitely. And I think especially when there are times of things that are far more existential than historical, when times of like struggle and pain and suffering, and I look at the world and I look at how whatever's going on, the disciples believe something happened.
Yeah, I
that
agree.
they saw something.
Of course.
And so I just think that the explanations of the alternatives of that actually happening are insufficient insofar as how they actually explain the data.
Do you have any doubt?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
have at least even 1% doubt.
Oh, definitely. And I think especially when there are times of things that are far more existential than historical, when times of like struggle and pain and suffering, and I look at the world and I look at how messy it is, children who die young, people who are abused, all these things. There are moments where I think, how could there be a good God? I mean, I'm not immune to doubt. And the interesting thing that I find about the Bible is that the Bible is very open to the God of the Bible being open to us coming to him with our doubts. You know,
And
one
we see
third
this.
of
We see this throughout the Bible. We see. I'm reading Job right now. Like, God saw he was a righteous man, but there was a lot of times where, in his defense in the beginning of Job, or really in the middle of Job, he just like what's going on, right? And then you have, and he's gonna talk about John the Baptist, so I'll let him talk about that. I mean, you have all the disciples who doubted. Especially what's his name, Thomas, doubting Thomas. I mean, everyone, and even me. Like, it's not like I do even have moments of like, God, like, is this all legit? Am I wasting my time? Should I just live life to the fullest? And when I mean to the fullest, like, just live life to please me and do things. And you know what brings me back, weirdly? Is my son. And God uses that because I can honestly, oh man, I'm about to be divorced. I'm going to go to the club. I'm going to go to the bar. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I just want to spend time with my son. And I think about that. And I think about how much I love my son. And I think about my Father in heaven and how he feels that way towards me, but on a whole nother level. And even though my son doesn't understand the things that are happening, As long as I'm here, I'm going to do everything I can for him. How much more is that the case for God? And so when I get into those moments of doubt, I'm reminded of my relationship with him. It's not always a theological breakdown for me. Now, I love theology, doctrine, apologetics, and all of them are great, but they mean nothing without a loving relationship. Let me say that again. Theology, doctrine, apologetics are great, but they mean nothing without a real relationship with Jesus that is filled with love and covenant. Or someone said, the foundation of marriage is not love, it's covenant, it's commitment. God made a covenant with us. And obviously he is love and he loves us deeply. But there are going to be moments where we don't love God. But he made a covenant with us, a commitment. And it brings us back to him. And I'm so grateful for that. But in my times of doubt, especially when everything seems to be falling apart, I take it back to, but my relationship with God, like he's been there for me. He's done some miraculous things in my life. I remember those times. And I feel his presence. He's been there for me. He's been there for people that I love. I've seen it with my own two eyes. I've seen the transformations. I've seen the heart change. I've seen the miracles. And I know I'm allowing my doubt, and my doubt comes because either I'm highly emotional or there's some situation that is happening. And sometimes I simply have to back up for a moment and be reminded of my relationship with him. And that's how I deal with that. So let's continue.
Of Psalms, which is like right in the middle of the Bible, this kind of poetic literature, if you want to call it that, are sometimes referred to as the lament or the complaint Psalms. It's things like Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from me?
Man, have I said that a lot this year? Not necessarily that, but I'm like, God, where are you? Where are you, God? I don't feel you as much. I feel like that experience that I once had is gone. Where are you, Father? I've prayed specific prayers. I prayed things that you would want me to pray for, God. I prayed your promises. Why weren't some of my prayers answered? Maybe they were, but just in a different way. Maybe some of those answers that he did answer with was simply no. And here's the crazy thing. In times, I ain't going to say all times, but sometimes silence is an answer. Sometimes. Because maybe we're looking for an answer and God is being silent because he wants to see if we trust him in the silence. And here's the cool thing. God is never silent. We have the words of God. The words of God. You read this, and God speaks. So in the moments where God seems silent, maybe he's pointing you to his word so that he could speak to you through here. Let's continue.
I cry out by day and I hear no answer. And I think what's interesting that I find with the Bible is its transparency in saying we're going to struggle. There's this really great story in the Gospel of John. Well, it's in a couple of the instances of the Gospels where John the Baptist, who's like Jesus' cousin and good friend, he's been in prison because he's been speaking out against Herod. He's been being a little bit too verbal politically. And so he gets taken and he's in prison. And though he's the one that baptized Jesus and said, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, when he's in prison, he doubts. And he sends his disciples over to Jesus to ask, are you the Messiah? Are you the one we're waiting for? Or should we be waiting for another? Now, in that interaction, Jesus actually says, John the Baptist is the greatest of all men born of women, which is basically everybody, right? And yet, in that very same setting, John the Baptist is doubting that Jesus is who he says he is because he's experiencing pain.
So this is just important to understand that Jesus is calling John the Baptist like one of the greatest human beings to ever exist. And yet John the Baptist doubted. So God is not afraid of our doubts. He wants us to bring it to him. What did John do? He sent his disciples. He brought his doubt to Jesus. And Jesus answered him. He was like, look what you've seen. Don't you see the blind see, the lame walk, the sick are healed, right? And so when we doubt, it's okay. Go to Jesus. Give it to him. He is not afraid of it.
On that point of you seeing horrific things happening in the world and then having doubts, I think for me that was one of the persuasive arguments of the new atheist movement that I became a part of when I was 18 years old, which was I think Richard Dawkins had said about if God is all loving, then why would he let a 2-year-old kid in Africa have their eyeball eaten out from the inside by a parasite?
Yeah.
Like if I could intervene with that, because the assertion is that God is omnipotent, all powerful, and omniscient, all present.
Yeah.
If I could intervene with that as a human, I would stop that. And so if God is omnipotent, all powerful and omnipresent, knows everything and is everywhere, then why wouldn't he intervene with the baby having its eyeball eaten out from the inside?
Yeah. It's a good point. And I think if there is an objection that is truly impactful on Christianity, in the atheist corner, it is the problem of evil, and always has been, because it's far more of an emotional and existential question than it is an intellectual question. Now, part of the problem with it is that if we're talking about evil with a capital E, we're implying that there's a good with a capital G. And so I think we do run into an issue.
So one of the greatest, hits for Christianity is like, hey, there's evil. Okay, well, where did evil come from? The capital E, evil. Who dictates what is evil? Who came, or who was the ones able to create the morals that we have? Now, some people, oh man, we're just born with it and it's for flourishing. Well, we've seen the opposite. Right. And we've even seen a majority of people at certain times do evil things. So it's not about the majority at times. But God says the law is written in our hearts. Right. We have this moral code in here. It's still in there. But where does that come from? Because if there is no moral lawgiver, then that means morality is simply subjective. And if you do believe that, then you would have to stand firm that when a 2-year-old gets, murdered and some other awful things, since I believe in a moral lawgiver, I can say objectively that is wrong 100% of the time. But then someone who doesn't believe in a moral lawgiver, that is God, that means morality can be subjective. And that means it would push you in the corner of saying, well, I believe it's wrong. And I think that majority of people think that it's wrong. But it's not fully wrong because morality is subjective. There might be other people who say, no, what he did was right to kill that 2-year-old, right? And guys, think logically here. Morality is not subjective. It's objective. There is right and there is good, or right and wrong, good, bad, good, evil. So I know the question is, if there's a good God, why is there evil? Well, first, I would also have to explain with that is what is good and what is evil to you, and where does that come from? Where does good and evil, the morality, where does that come from? Because it's funny, you're arguing against God while using a moral code given to us by God. So you're having to steal from God to argue against him. All right, let's continue.
When saying that evil exists or implying that good exists, and if we're implying that good exists or implying that there's a moral law to adhere to call the good good and the evil evil, and if there's a moral law, then there has to be a moral lawgiver. And that's where we come into issues with, is this subjective or is this objective?
I think the atheist movement would argue that that moral good is virtue of what helps me to survive. So like watching a small child suffer in such a way, if I didn't feel anything bad about that, then I wouldn't have the wiring for survival because I wouldn't have the proclivity to defend a suffering child. If I don't have that, then I probably don't reproduce and I don't pass on my genes and then I'm selected out of existence. So that pain I feel when I see a child suffering is a function of my evolutionary mechanics that make me more likely to survive. And anyone that didn't have that wouldn't have survived and wouldn't be here now.
Sure.
So evolution, therefore, is the answer.
I think that might suffice in certain instances. However, it's still sort of smuggling in moral categories into a biological explanation. So part of, I mean, you read Richard Dawkins, you read River Out of Eden, and he has that section where he talks about, we shouldn't expect to see any rhyme or reason, good or bad. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. And there's an aspect of Dawkins himself in that volume, at least at that time when he wrote it, articulating that at the end of it all, there is no such thing as actually, you can't call that parasite in that boy's eye evil. You can say I don't like it, but to import this moral category of evil is actually to import an idea. And this is actually what Dawkins was criticized by individuals like John Gray, the philosopher who taught at the London School of Economics. And he says, you're a really great biologist, but then you want to impart actual intrinsic value to people. And if you're looking at a simple, selfish DNA perspective, you can't actually ascribe that because your DNA, your selfish DNA exists to carry on its selfish DNA. And so in one sense, that child has no bearing on you. Now, it might have like a protective mechanism where you want to figure out why the child got the parasite, and so you try to avoid that in order to not get the parasite yourself. But science can't actually give you an explanation for what the moral implications are in that instance. Let me give you an example.
I think I understand the point there.
Yes.
It's essentially asserting that, like, why does that child matter to me? Because my DNA should just be trying to take care of itself. I guess in biology, there's I don't always know who my child is, but also from an evolutionary perspective, if we were raised in communities and tribes, we took care of all of the children.
Sure.
In the surroundings. I would take care of my brother's children and he would take care of mine, therefore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, that goes back to the point of survival, which means that I'm more likely to survive if I take care of, like, my community.
Sort of. You read something like The Origin of Species, though. Like Darwin himself, when he's articulating the survival of the fittest, there is an aspect of you shouldn't take care of those people because they're actually bringing the genetic gene pool down. So we see, even in like the eugenics movement, pulling a lot from individuals like Darwin in order to validate the fact that in order to carry on your selfish DNA, this idea of taking care of the marginalized and those on the fringes of society and those who are the lesser thans is not evolutionary advantageous because survival of the fittest implies that the fittest should survive.
And real quick, this whole thing about evolution, do I believe in evolution? Certain parts of evolution, yeah. I believe that there are things that can evolve, right? Like, and adapt. I believe in that. But what I don't believe is that we come from apes. The skeletons that they found, they're not human. They're like, oh, the ones in the middle. And some of them aren't real. Some of them are fake. Some of them are completely not human at all. There is no real solid evidence of this. Oh no, there's this, like, okay, just do your research. And then on top of that, when things evolve, if you actually think about it, like evolution, it strips down. You can't add stuff. It actually strips down, right? So like and then also evolution doesn't change species. Like it doesn't change a dog to a cat. Like that's just not how it works. It's not how it works. And it's so like, do I believe in parts of evolution and adaptation? Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that. We have evidence of that. But do I believe that we come from monkeys? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Where are the middle people? Why are there still monkeys? How can we see none in the middle? Why is there two separate? Right? Have we ever, I know we've only been here, have we ever seen a species turn into a different species? No. We've never seen a fox turn into a tiger. We've never seen a rhino turn into an elephant. Like, come on. Anyway.
These are obviously not the fittest. It's actually a Judeo-Christian ethic in the understanding of everybody having equal value, that we should be taking care of people because they have intrinsic value, not extrinsic value, that allows us to then even import an idea of taking care of those who are not necessarily specifically related to me and mine. And it comes back to, okay, where are we grounding this objectivity in? Because there have been societies that have attempted to do it in like a might is right aspect. And you ground the objectivity of what we say is right in a society that says this is better for the most amount of individuals within a particular community.
I think about Yuval Noah
Harari. Yeah.
In this book Sapiens, where he says that the real defining trait of our species versus other species was our ability to collaborate and basically scratch each other's backs. And that meant that we had evolutionary advantages, because if we could work together in a big group and we could believe in stories and we believe in money and prison and governments, etc., we could band together and take on the lion, or band together and take on the elephant, or whatever. And it's actually that, and in part, there you have, like, I need to take care of you, you need to take care of me, and we're going to reciprocate that altruism and increase our survival chances. So again, that might explain why I care about that kid, because the species that didn't, they would never have been able to band together and take on the elephant.
Yes. I think it's largely our modern perspective living in a society where we are starting on second base already with our moral perspectives.
Yeah.
Right? We have inherited all of these moral categories because of our Judeo-Christian ethic. If you look at basically every society prior to this, or even societies in the East, that's not a given, right? That's not an assumption, especially in societies that have, say, understandings of karmic cycles, whether that's in like Buddhism or Hinduism. The idea of altruism is actually can be categorized as an evil, because in the cycle of samsara, the object...
Websites your competitors don't want you to know, part 2.
All you do is go to this website, and it lets you find out exactly how much
objectivity of that ethic is found in the revelation of specific revelation in Scripture.
Do you believe in evolution?
I don't.
You don't believe it's true?
No. I am open to the fact that I don't think that a belief in evolution undermines Christianity in any way. However, and prefacing this by saying I'm not a scientist. I'm an advocate for intelligent design, and I would basically punt the complex conversations of evolutionary biology to individuals who are far more studied than me, like Stephen Meyer and Jonathan McClatchy and John Torres. And I guess you could have a, if you want to call it a time of the gaps explanation, just add lots of millions of years and it solves this issue. I don't know if I am completely satisfied with that answer, because obviously there's adaptation, but he has actually created us to be, and still desires to have that relationship.
And if we do sin, if I sin in my life, do I go to hell?
You don't. I mean, the answer to that is yes and no, but am
I going to hell?
Are you going to hell? Stephen Bartlett. Is Stephen Bartlett going to hell? This is the clip that they're going to put online, right? Wes says Stephen Bartlett is going to hell. I mean, here's the thing. Everybody is going to hell. Everybody. Here's how I've said it in the past, right? The Bible is very clear.
So, I mean, I think he's going to bring this up, but, Romans 3:23, Romans 6:23, I believe, too. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. We all have sinned, and the penalty of sin is death. And not just physical death, but spiritual death. And so here's the thing. Because of our sin, we all don't deserve heaven. Every single one of us. No one is good. Perfectly good. We are all broken. We all make mistakes, and God is a holy. I think people don't understand this, or at least don't want to. When we talk about God, God is holy and perfect. Holy and perfect. I want you to imagine a room that is that is completely white, right? And we're all muddy and dirty, right? The moment we step into that room, our dirt, our filth, all of that is going to get somewhere, right? And God's like, no, I am holy and perfect. You can't come to me because you're sinful, you're dirty, you turned your back on me. But thank God, God didn't leave it like that. Because what God did, instead of just keeping us separated because we chose to rebel against him, he put himself in our shoes, became a human, lived the perfect life we couldn't live, died the death that we should have died, rose again, proving that Jesus is God. And then what did he do? When he did die, he took our pain, our punishment, our dirt, and he put it on himself on the cross. So what's crazy is that I'm dirty, but when I accept Jesus and what he did for me, all of that dirt now is off of me and put on Jesus on the cross. And now I am able to walk into the Holy of Holies. I am able to walk in that clear, perfectly clean white room, right? And I'm not going to get it dirty because all of my dirt has been removed and put on Jesus on the cross. Like, that's what Jesus did for us. So good.
All good people go to heaven. But Jesus said, no one is good but God alone. So if all good people go to heaven, and no one is good but God alone, only God is in heaven.
So do you believe that there is a hell and a heaven as we sort of typically understand it? A place that is great to go to after we die, and a place that is very hot.
Place that's very hot. I mean, there's a lot of imagery of like fire and weeping and gnashing of teeth. I think a lot of that is kind of reflective and allegorical more than it's like a physical, tangible thing that is, most of our perceptions of hell are largely shaped by depictions in the Middle Ages of Dante's Inferno and that kind of thing, right? I think it's more.
So first of all, just to clear something up, hell is not eternal. Hold on. I know some people are going to think. Now, this is actually my biggest fight internally with, the Bible and Christianity of like this idea of eternal suffering. This is my stance. I believe that, and all right, let me just finish this. Hell is not eternal. And I'll tell you why. Because hell itself is going to get thrown into the lake of fire. Now, the lake of fire, from my understanding, is eternal. And it is a fire that continues to burn. So this is where I stand on hell, and I know people just say hell when they say lake of fire. It's kind of referring to hell, so I get that. So, do I believe that hell or the lake of fire is eternal? I do. Do I want to be wrong on that? Absolutely. I want to believe in annihilism, that, you get your punishment for a certain amount of time and then you basically get annihilated. You cease to exist. I hope that's what happens. But what I believe is that hell is eternal pain, eternal torment. Now, someone could say, and again, that's my biggest fight. I want to believe in annihilism. I just don't think. And there are some people that can read stuff in the Bible and stuff like that and make it look like that. And I hope they're right, to be honest with you. I just don't think they are. Well, how can God be good if hell's eternal? Again, we're underestimating. We're underestimating who God is and how serious our sin is and how perfect God is. Now, and I even get the argument like, hey, I'm a father. If my son even did the worst thing to me, I wouldn't send him to eternal punishment. You know, even killers here on earth get 25 to life or life without parole, but you know, when they die, that's it. And so like, um do I think that there's a possibility uh that you might cease to exist one day? Maybe, yeah. I want to believe that, but you know, where I stand, I know the again, this is my hardest point when it comes to hell. When it comes to discussing about that, um, I just think that there's not really a great answer because I do know that God is holy. He's eternal. And when you sin against him, that is an eternal thing. Like our choices have eternal consequences. And that's why it's so important for Christians to go and preach the gospel. And I think that's why there is so much urgency in this. So do I hope that, you know, annihilation exists? Yes. But what I actually believe is that um, hell getting thrown into the lake of fire is eternal. And this is why we need to share the gospel. And I hope I'm wrong about that. It's not a salvational issue, but at the same time, it is a big issue when it comes to the weight of our sin. Like either way, you don't want to go there. Whether it's obviously if it's forever, but even if it's for a moment, I don't think we truly will ever understand until it happens, whether we're in heaven or in hell, of how great it is to be in the presence of God and how horrible it is to not be in his presence. Because if God is good and he is removed, then everything that is good is removed. So yeah, that's my take on that.
So that you will experience the full weight of the separation from God's goodness. Not necessarily a separation from God, because I think God's punishment and his wrath are going to be felt there. But if we're talking about like a good place, bad place, in the very simplest of terms, yes. But heaven isn't full of good people. Heaven is full of people who understand they are not good enough. And so I mentioned that like justice, mercy thing. Justice is fulfilled on Jesus. So because justice is fulfilled, now mercy, which is not getting what we do deserve, is able to be given to those who put their trust in Jesus.
So if I don't believe in Jesus,
Yeah.
and I don't believe in the Bible, but I live a good life, I'm nice to people, I'm charitable, try and be kind wherever I can be,
Yeah.
and I don't believe in God, am I going to hell or heaven as it relates to the scriptures?
Well, I don't think if you're living your life rejecting God, God is not going to force you into his presence.
So I'm not going to go into heaven. I'm not going to go to heaven then.
No.
Okay. And we'll end that there. Okay. Yeah, you're not. Because number one, people always get this confused. And it's an honest question. You know, I live a good life. I do good things. Shouldn't I get into heaven? And it's, again, not understanding how even our best good deeds are like filthy rags to a perfect and holy God. To a perfect and holy God, our best deeds are like filthy rags. Because guess what? Even though we may do a lot of good things, it doesn't erase the fact that we have done sinful things. Like if you went to the judge and say you had this person who did so many good things for 20 years, like 20 years full of charitable work and being generous and helping people and serving his community, doing so many good things, but then one day he's just like, man, I'm gonna take some drinks, and he drinks and he drinks and he drinks, and then he gets into a bar fight, and in the fight he accidentally he kills someone, right? And then he's placed in front of a judge, and then the lawyers are saying, look at all of the 20 years of good that he's done. Do you think a good lawyer or a good judge would be like, man, you're right. He has done a lot of good. So, we shouldn't send him to jail for the crime he just committed. No, that's not, number one, that's not how the law works. And that's not how a good judge works. But like, hey, I acknowledge you've done a lot of good in your life. And that's good. But you still killed someone. You still broke the law. And you still have to answer for those crimes. You are responsible for the consequences of your actions, even if you've done all of these good things. And that's just a human judge that's flawed and broken. Imagine a perfect and holy judge. It doesn't matter how good you think you live your life. Let me ask you, if you put your own thoughts on a screen for the past month, would they all be good? Because God sees those too. It's just a reminder that no one is good. And you may have done good things in your life, and you may still be doing good things in your life. But I'm sorry to tell you, you are not, by yourself, you are not good enough for God when it comes to your salvation. Hear me when I say that. On your own merit, on your own goodness, on your own works and good deeds, you are not enough when it comes to your salvation with God, because God is perfect. And this is exactly why Jesus had to come down, live a perfect life to show us he was God, to die for us, to take our place, and rose again, proving that what he did on that cross actually meant something. Because even Paul says, if Jesus didn't rise from the grave, our faith is in vain. And so, but Jesus rose from the grave, proving that what he did on the cross, he overcame sin, he overcame death, that we could put our trust and faith in him. And when we do that, it's not about our goodness or our works, but it's about Jesus's goodness and his works. I think somewhere in here he says, we are, the Bible says that, we're not saved by works. It's by grace through faith. And I like how he did a little wordplay. He said, we are saved by works. It's just not our works. It's the work of the cross. It's the work of Jesus. We're saved by the work of what Jesus did, not by our own works. And again, bad things are going to happen. The Bible is clear on that. You look at the Bible, you look at the people in the Bible, every one of them, they all suffered. They all went through things. I'm literally in the book of Job right now. Man, what he went through, I would wish on not even my greatest enemy. If I had a greatest enemy, I wouldn't wish that on no one. Like, bad things are going to happen. Suffering is going to happen for now. But here's the thing. With God, suffering can create purpose, Suffering can create purpose. Suffering can create endurance. Suffering can create your character. And it can give you wisdom. Suffering with God means that your suffering is not in vain, meaning that your suffering is not meaningless, meaning that there is purpose behind your suffering. But if there is no God, then who cares? We're all going to die one day. We're all going to be forgotten. We're all just a vapor and dust in the air. Here one moment, gone the next. So it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, that's what you're saying. You might not say it in those words, but ultimately, that's what you have to, that's what you believe. And God has done something with evil when Jesus died on that cross, and he will completely defeat evil when he comes back. When that is, I don't know. But I hope me and you stay prepared. Don't get ready, be ready. Stay ready. And if you're not ready, get ready. Love Jesus with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love others as yourself. Speak truth, even if it's uncomfortable. And man, I think that's it. I think that's all that I got for you guys today, man. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, hit that like, comment, subscribe. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers. Hopefully I could do that soon. I'm almost there. But guys, thank you for listening, and I appreciate you guys. And remember that close enough, it's not close enough. When it comes to our relationship with Jesus, there's always another step you can take. I hope you can take that today. God bless. I'll see you next time. Peace.
Close enough.